everybody. Thank you so much, Madison, for that beautiful introduction. I myself am much better with images than with words, as you'll see in the film. But as Madison mentioned, this is a film that I shot in Ecuador, which is my country of origin, and it's the first film that I shot there, which, in a way, as I step kind of back from the film and I see it now, I understand this work as a film about returning and confronting that place that is at once familiar but also foreign in a sense. And so that's all I'm going to say for now, but I will be here after the screening so we can have a conversation, and I'll be happy to answer questions. But I also want to just thank everybody that made this possible: Adam, Hyman, Filmforum, MoCA, and especially Madison Brookshire. Thank you so much for putting all of this together. It's really special for me to be here. This is the first time that the film is showing in Los Angeles, and I used to live here, so I feel very connected to the city and to the people here. So it's a special screening, and thank you for being here. Thanks.
And Alex asked me to ask the first question, so that's why I'm standing.
Okay. If people have questions right away.
Okay.
Well, either way. Yes.
So this happened after the earthquake, right? This film was made after?
No, this was made before.
Before the earthquake.
So that's what the text in Spanish at the end. I'm saying that I was dedicating the film to the people that were affected by it, because a big part of the film was shot where the epicenter of the earthquake happened. And so it's actually very crazy that those places don't really exist, or they don't exist in the same way, at least. Yeah. But yeah, so I always find it easier to start talking about this with questions, or if anybody has a comment or yes.
You talked about this being about returning and confronting Ecuador. Could you just talk a little bit more about what specifically you felt like the film was confronting for you?
Yes. Okay. So when I was talking about confronting, it's coming from the fact that I had lived outside of the country for most of my life, and so there's always that question of my own experience with the place, of being of that place, but also not. Right. So I think that's kind of what I meant when I said confronting. But then there's also confronting in the sense of the choices that I'm making in how I'm framing things, or in the image, or in the formal choices. And I think, Madison, your question was going to be something in relation to that, right? But so I set out to make a film that was kind of exploring geography and temporality in these places that were places that I had never been to. And I chose specific places that I had never been to, but also that small communities that are isolated in a sense from the big cities, or not in a sense, they're isolated. So most of them, they have never really been documented in a film before. But then the film really ends up being about, or I don't know, being about, but what I found is that I was not really focusing so much on the geography, but on people and my and my relationship to that encounter with the people that I met, or that I found along the way. So I guess confronting in that sense. Yes.
What was it like directing people to sit in one place and not move, in essence?
Well, I wasn't. Okay. So the film, I think brings up this tension of what what documentary is, and what documentary fiction, like how things are constructed, and that's something that I'm hoping is present, right, in the film. It's for people watching, is to think about this idea of construction in documentary, right? And I shot a lot for this film. The filming took place in a period of like 4 or 5 months. So I had a lot of material, like 60 hours of material, which I think for some people that's normal and that's not that much, but my background is in film, 16mm film. And so for me, 60 hours of footage is a lot, right? So I had to kind of start understanding what I had. And it took a long time, but I was really drawn to these shots and these images where people are, where not a lot is happening in terms of action, but a lot is happening in terms of duration, right? And they also happen to be these shots where this kind of performative aspect of being in front of the camera is heightened, but I wasn't really directing. So yes, it's a construction, right? But I'm not telling them what to do. So I'm approaching people as this is what they're doing, but then together we create that image. So it's hard to say how, all of them are different. Some are more constructed than others. I spent more time in some places and less in other places. So it really depends on each situation. Yeah.
How do you convince someone of your mission? It's a portrait.
Mm-hmm.
It's a moving portrait.
Mm-hmm.
How do they respond at first?
Yeah. Well, I don't. My work. I'm used to working in public space, and Madison was kind of talking about this at the beginning with my other films being also portraits of people in cities and places, and so I, it's something that I've been developing over time, that how you enter a place, how you encounter a person, situation. But I usually work alone. For this film, I did have a crew, 3 people, which actually made things a lot harder for me. But it depends on the situation. I think there's, again, this like when you are behind the camera, you hold the power, right? So you have the power over the image. But I am aware of that, and I'm aware of that vulnerability that happens with that exchange, and I try to be as vulnerable myself as I can as well. I'm going into this place and alone usually, and so it's kind of an exchange of trust. I don't know, sometimes I talk to the people, sometimes I don't. But yes, so it's there's no formula, I guess. It's really dependent on the situation. Yeah, I guess I'm not threatening looking. Yeah. Yes.
I'm really interested in, out of 60 hours of footage, why you included slate, your slate so many times. 2, 3?
2. And it happens in other ways. Well, what do you think?
Because there was a dialogue about your presence, and there were times when the subject was having conversation, either literally or otherwise, with some other figure or with some element in the public space. And sometimes you were very absent from that, and sometimes you were a part of the conversation. And then the fact that it came out, I didn't know if it was simply a moment of modernism, or if it was a moment of reminding us of your place, or if it had some of the rhythmic element for you.
I mean, I think maybe a little bit of everything that you're describing. But yes, definitely this moment of you being aware that somebody's behind the camera. Although I think that's part of every image. And I think in every image you are aware, right? The camera is not hidden in this film. It's very much present. But it's also this exercise of you, audience, to be reminded that this is an image that's constructed. It's not necessarily real, right, or truth, or all of those things. And it's also kind of a game, I think. Maybe not a game, but it's it kind of breaks the rhythm a little bit, and I think it was necessary in those points. Yes. Anybody else? Yes.
The one shot that is quite different from the rest, it seems, is the one with the little girls on the playground where you're shooting through the door.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get permission to shoot them, or I mean, it looks very like
Voyeurs.
almost like you're spying on them? Yeah.
I mean, like I said before, I'm in that space for a long time, so people are very much aware of me, and that there's this person with other people in their town filming, right? So everybody's aware. So there's not this like ritual of permission per se, but everybody's aware, and then they come close to the camera at the end, and I have other shots of them which I didn't include. Yeah. So I hope that's clear. But like I said, so every situation is a little bit different, and maybe that's a hard choice as well, because I'm only choosing one shot from each moment, right? And that's a conscious decision, obviously, right? But you don't see what is there, and I think that's interesting to me, because it's also meant for you to imagine the place and imagine the geography. So so it kind of opens up this other layer, I hope. Yes. Jean.
I was going to ask if there was a certain duration for each shot where you became kind of invisible to people, or was there a certain amount of time that passed before you selected certain clips that you shared? Because there seems to be such a comfort with the camera, or an invisibility of it.
Yes, I don't know. It's interesting because at some points it's described as the camera is so much present, and it's it's not hidden, and then in other moments it's invisible, so it's like this back and forth. This is the first thing that I've shot with video, right? And so I chose video because I was thinking of creating shots that had specific duration that felt very much present now, right? But it also had all these difficulties because when you're working with film, you make a choice of when it begins, when it ends. And I was trying to do the same thing here, but it worked different. So a lot of those choices came in editing, of when I start the shot, when I end it. I tried to be loyal to how I shot it, but not in every. That doesn't happen in every shot. But I don't know. I mean, I think obviously people are aware of me. There's scenes that is a lot more palpable. Like, for example, the family that's watching television in their bed. Obviously, they invited me in, and they know they know that I'm there, right? But they're performing like the specific task. So yes, they come in and out, and I think that's the shot where that happens, because the little girl looks into the camera. So then there's this recognition, right? But then they kind of drift off. But yeah, so these are the shots that I was interested in, where exactly that happens, where you come in and out of that suspension. Tom.
It might seem strange to compare your movie with The Big Lebowski.
Yes.
Jeff Bridges said about The Big Lebowski, he said it says nothing, but somehow it says everything. And that's what I was feeling about your movie, that it was saying nothing, but somehow it said everything.
Well, I think that's a compliment. Thank you, because it is. It is it's hard to, make this thing that you have in your mind and make it exist, right? So how do you talk about a whole country, or how do you impose meaning on such a broad thing? And obviously that's not the case, right? So it's a very subjective and personal experience of time. But I was, really kind of thinking about how you can describe something through a very small gesture. So, thank you.
But there are a number of shots that seem very kind of uncomfortable or uncanny.
Mhm.
I wonder when you became aware of that.
Can you talk about one specifically?
The guy digging a hole, for example, or the shaving shot.
Well, you mean uncomfortable for you as
Watch,
a...
yeah.
In what sense? I mean, I'm curious, because I think it really depends on each, individual perception, right? I would think other ones are more, or bring up that tension more, like for the portraits, the straight-on portraits of time. Sometimes for me, even it's kind of jarring. Those not necessarily, but yes, I'm aware of that, and this is why I'm choosing them too. I mean, that something is. I'm not really trying to resolve it, right? Resolve this tension, but I definitely want to bring it forth. Yes.
I'm wondering if you could, first of all, thank you for sharing your work. Amazing experience. I wonder if you could talk about either a moment or moments that most surprised you, either in the shooting or as you were in the kind of editing phase, kind of like an aha, like, wow, I wasn't expecting that, or, a moment of surprise, perhaps.
That the film got finished. I finished it. No, it took a long time. I mean, I started doing this in 2011, I think. What year are we? I don't know, 2012. Yeah, so like five years. And so every stage is very different, and certain things happen, but it was, I don't know, it was a film of where I tried a first time, like a first time shooting in Ecuador, first time using video, first time making a feature-length film, first time working with a crew, first time working with more money, because I got 2 grants from the National Film Fund in Ecuador. So yeah, it was a very long experience, and usually all of my work is made, I guess, in a similar way, where I research about something, I'm thinking about something, but I don't write a script or anything like that. And so for this, I did have moments where I thought I was not gonna finish because it could go so many ways, and there's so many things that there were so many, paths where the film could go. But I think, in terms of being surprised, it's each of those situations, and there's a lot more that are not in the film. But this, I think why I film, or why I'm a filmmaker, a photographer, it's this feeling of being behind the camera and being able to explore through that silent, usually silent moment of this connection. I don't know. It sounds so cheesy, but I think that's the driving force of discovering something that I see later too. So that's surprising. Yeah. Yes.
I'm curious about. You mentioned that you were kind of interested in these moments of tension where either the subjects are recognizing that they're being watched and then coming into being maybe more relaxed and natural. And I think that's interesting as well. And I noticed for me when either someone was being watched or didn't know they were being watched, or at least we didn't know they knew we were being watched. What I began to think about, and I wonder if this is anything you were thinking about, was that we experienced a lot of images of people observing others or other things, or gazing at, I'm thinking particularly the opening shot, or like the family watching television, or the reverse shot of a little boy watching television that we don't see, or man focusing on digging, or the final shot, which I think is maybe the only shot, reverse shot.
It's the only sequence.
Yeah, and that they're watching an empty door, sort of, which is humorous, or the lights or something. But I wonder, anyway, I just noticed that it seemed like a lot of interest. If we weren't actually just having a portrait of someone facing the camera, it seemed that there was an interest in other people looking at other things. Of the young boy sitting on the beach, gazing out into the ocean. I wonder if that's all something you're thinking about, or if I'm just noticing that.
No, in some shots, like the family with the TV, it's clear, right? You're watching, but then they're also watching something else, and there's this three dimension to that. Yeah, I kind of wanted things or moments where people are focusing on a very simple thing. It can be sitting, but so many things happen during that time for you, right? But for them, yes, but also for you and for me while I'm watching. Yeah. So anyway, thank you for that.
Yeah, I just noticed there's something.
Yeah.
It was very nice.
Yes.
Can you expand on your thoughts about the Vinicio book? Because he doesn't talk in a very in the best terms about Ecuador.
He doesn't talk in the. Yeah, I was. So he's talking about the reference to Michaud, the poet from Belgium that came to Ecuador in 1926, I think, and he creates this travel journal. It's called Ecuador, a travel journal, and I reference it in my. But the reason why I reference it is more in terms of formal choices. Yes, I think it's interesting the way that he describes his experience, not through the way that conventionally you would describe a voyage, right? Talking about, the colors of the mountains and the textiles and the people, right? So, but he's really focusing on this everyday experience, and really the way that he fragments these entries and these thoughts, and they don't seem to really be connected. And then also he talked about the book being, he considers it an incomplete piece, which that was really interesting to me, because, you know, he chose to publish it that way, but then there's this idea of something not complete. So for me, that means something that is more open, more permeable. And then, so I was thinking about that in terms of my structure, which obviously it's not a sequential thing. And in a way, it's like these separate, independent shots, but they accumulate. So I was really thinking about this idea of accumulation, right? So fragmentary and how they accumulate over time and almost like draw these like invisible lines or connections throughout. So in that sense, I was thinking about the book. Yeah. Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not an expert on this, my first time doing this, but like film stuff. But I'm just curious, again, as the gentleman said, it was no acting, like that one boy looking out into, you know.
Well, it's not acting in the sense that they're not actors, right? So these are he lives in that place, and he was in his motorbike, and he stopped in the beach. But I am framing the shot and asking him to be part of this this moment. So there's whenever somebody's in front of a camera, they are performing. So in that sense, yes, there's but that's what I'm kind of playing with.
Can I also ask, I really enjoyed the part with the older lady talking about like the past. Like I actually felt, really touched on that. Like that was questions you were asking, or she kind of just offered herself?
I was asking a lot of questions. I'm always asking a lot of questions. And that was a very hard decision, actually, because I have so many conversations with people and interviews, but at the end, that's not the film I made. But I did want to include certain moments of that. And because she's talking about time and memory, and the film really is also thinking of this. There's temporality in its construction. So yes. So I thought it worked. But thanks for your comment.
And last but not least,
yes.
What part of Ecuador are you from? I'm sorry, this is my last one.
No, that's okay.
I'm just wondering where in Ecuador are you from?
Where am I from?
Yeah.
I was born in a city called Cuenca. It's in the south. Where are you from?
No, my dad's from Quito. So
but that's where I grew up. I mean, it's a long story, but that's where my family lives. My family lives in Quito.
I enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could talk about the film as like an Ecuadorian film. Like, I mean, there was like the mention of Walker Evans, and I was thinking of like, the film as like a nation building project or like a critical nation building project. It has like an itinerary. You're making these connections between like the people depicted and the places. And I guess I was thinking as you were talking that Territorio, if you didn't have the information that it was a film shot in Ecuador, if you would know that, and I don't recall any kind of like context or information that has that, but the whole film you do have that question of like where are these places, who are these people, what's the connection, if you didn't have like the framing. So yeah, I guess talk about like how you think of yourself kind of like as a Ecuadorian filmmaker.
I mean, it's a hard question because I mean there is that context, right? So you do know that it is shot there, but it is, I am playing with the word territory. I mean, I'm not defining what a whole country is. It's like I said, like a subjective experience of my experience, right? With these moments. But no, I mean, I guess the way that I can answer that is that I did get a film grant to make this film. So one of the things that I was wanting to do with that is the cinematic identity in Ecuador is pretty new, and on most films that are made have very conventional language, a very conventional approach. So for me, it was important to kind of contribute with another thought of what cinema is and can be. And so in that sense, yes, it's relevant that that's an Ecuadorian film, that I'm from there. But I don't know if I answered that well.
Well, I mean, like, for example, like, as you're going about, meeting people, following this, like, itinerary, and then you return to it in the editing, you're choosing certain people to depict. And, like, I mean, I not being from Ecuador, as I experienced the film, noticed the kind of, like, demography, or, like, it's like there's certain kind of people being depicted.
Mm-hmm.
I have a certain curiosity about the spaces that comes about, and whether they're, in like the wider shots, you have a sense of context, and oftentimes you kind of like don't get as much.
Yeah, and that's the kind of like a very specific choice to have these closed frames, where you're imagining, right, the territory or the geography or the place through the sound, maybe usually, or through the connection with another image. But yeah, so for me it was important to tell this portrait through these details and through these small, not small, but just closed in moments. Yes.
You said that you were surprised that you were able to finish the film. How did you know when the film was finished?
Actually, for this film, I worked with an editor, and I had never done that before, because it was a huge task. We collaborated, and that was a new thing, and it's interesting because you have to get to a point where you just decide that it's finished, and you can keep working on it, or there can be a million versions of it, but at some point you just make a decision that's what it is. I don't know, it's intuitive, maybe, it feels finished. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So you contextualized in the introduction a quote by Walter Benjamin, and then also earlier there's a reference to Alan Sekula. And so I just was wondering, what other literature do you feel that you channel within your work, and what sort of other works would you recommend?
Oh, well, that I didn't write that. That was Madison, who's much smarter than I am. No, but for this film, I was reading this book by an Italian artist. Forgot his first name, but his last name is Carreri, and his book is called Walkscapes, and so he talks about walking as an art practice. But then also in the book, he really talks about the meaning of traveling. And he talks about traveling as an act of confronting, of recognizing, and of entering. So I thought that was, that was in my mind as I was filming. But my references are many, I think. Photography, street photography. I was just walking around the galleries and I saw the Helen Levitt photographs. And she made a film in the street with James Adji, right? And somebody else. There's a third, no?
Yeah.
I can't remember the third, sorry. But yeah, so that was one of my very strong kind of influences. These city films, like modernist city films. Yeah, a lot of photographers that kind of then delve into filmmaking, and so that transition. Yes.
Were any of the spaces though urban though? Because like, it didn't seem like they were like.
No, they were not.
So I thought that was interesting too, right? It felt like.
Well, they were not. Yeah. So
As
these,
like a portrait of like the country, there's no urban spaces. Like,
yeah. So that's kind of what I was talking about a little bit at the beginning, right? That these are places that are very isolated. They're very small. I was thinking about the passing of time, how it really, for me at least, in my own experience, it feels very different when you're in a place like this, and that was my approach, right? To really think about duration and time. So I chose not to film in cities and go to places that I've never been to. Yeah. Good. Okay. Thank you so much.